The original Zambezi Zinger opened at Worlds of Fun in 1973 as an extended jumbo jet from Schwarzkopf. There are only a couple of these ever built, and this is one of only two still operating, the other, of course, being Whizzer at Six Flags Great America. It had a great run while at Worlds of Fun, opened for over 20 years, closing in 1997. It was then purchased by Parque Del Café down in South America, where it reopened as Montaña Russa in 1999. It has operated there ever since, so also over 20 years. I think it's actually been at Parque Del Café longer now than it was at Worlds of Fun. I, of course, never had the chance to ride it at its original location, but after the park announced a new version of Zambezi Zinger would open up in 2023, I started doing some research about the original and actually made the trip down to Colombia to see what it was all about. And I had a lot of fun. It's one of those classic roller coasters that is just a good time. Nothing too crazy about it, but something that the whole family will be able to enjoy. So this is going to be my full in-depth review about the attraction. If you had the opportunity to ride it while I was at Worlds of Fun, or if you made it down to Colombia to experience this, or plan to make a visit to Parque Del Café, which is an amazing park, I highly recommend going. I think it's so cool that this attraction has been preserved after all these years. And they took a very different approach with this ride compared to Worlds of Fun. The original Zambezi Zinger was located in the woods. You couldn't really see any of the layout. Here, you can see everything in this one snapshot, this grand vista view. But don't mistake that as me saying that this ride is like plopped down on a flat piece of ground and it looks terrible. It's actually a really pretty location. And this is absolutely a terrain park, so they had to take this pre-existing coaster and make it work in this space. And they did a fantastic job with it. You look at this thing, you would think that it was always here. The way it wraps around these small hills, goes through valleys, and much like the original, this one also features a tunnel. It's located in the center of the park. You can see it from so many different vantage points, but more importantly, you can hear it from pretty much anywhere. This is like the loudest freaking coaster ever. At one point, someone in our group tested the sound and said it hit 95 decibels. And apparently it was just as loud when it was at Worlds of Fun too. That's not that uncommon for these types of rides. I've been used to hearing Jetstar 2 at Lagoon going around that course, and that thing is noisy. This thing even more so. And I also love how you can walk almost all the way around this attraction. There's so many cool views that you can get of it, and there's no bad angles. So let's talk about what a ride on Zambezi Zinger feels like. So you have 3 cars per train, each car holding up to 6 riders, but as little as 3. You ride it like bobsled style, where you have someone sitting in your lap essentially. And everything is very padded. It feels like there's no restraint. There is technically a seatbelt, so if you're riding 2 per row, you just wrap the whole thing around both of you, but you feel very exposed on this attraction. If you've ridden Whizzer, it's the exact same setup. We are nicknaming this thing the Cuddle Coaster, or the Colombian Cuddler. One of our friends who was a local and rode this thing back when it was at Worlds of Fun said he would bring dates to Worlds of Fun and they'd ride Zambezi Zinger, and it provided that unique experience that you just couldn't get on any of the other roller coasters. Now, if you are riding with someone, it's gonna get tight in there. There's not a whole lot of room for people. So if you're in your own individual row, you can kind of spread out a little bit, but it's definitely going to vary person to person depending on your size. You know, 2 kids will probably be just fine. Now, when I went, they also made you ride with your bag. And so we are sitting 2 per row plus a big backpack. Yeah, it was very, very cramped in there. So when you dispatch out of the station, you take a right-hand turn and you start up this electric-powered lift. There's a straight section, you pass through 2 hills. That's what I'm talking about, how it just like perfectly fits within their landscape. And you start up your spiral lift. You're gonna do 3 laps around. Your max height is only 57 feet. Obviously not very tall, but it's an iconic structure, very cool way to get to the top. And because it's old, it also takes a minute for it to reach that point. When you reach your peak, you have a great view of the area around you, and then you start off with your first drop. Now, as you can see, it's not very steep, so don't expect airtime on any of these drops. Actually, if you get any airtime at all, it's gonna be when you sit up front in that first row and you rise up into a crest. I will also add you're more likely to experience that sensation if you are riding alone. So if you're going with a couple people, try it out in either scenario, where you ride with someone or you ride by yourself. 2 different experiences. So if you're in the front, you could get a little bit of pop right here. You bank then low right up against the ground, rise up again, go through another mild drop. And then if you're sitting up front, this part right here, when you rise up into this crest that wraps around the lift hill, that is gonna be the strongest moment of airtime that you could possibly experience on Zambezi Zinger. But if you sit in anywhere other than the front, you're not gonna get that sensation. So that's why I said that the front was actually my favorite spot on this coaster. But the forces are also a little stronger, or at least it feels that way in the back. So Be sure to experience both if you can. Wrapping around this lift is fun, and the drop that immediately follows is probably the craziest part of the ride. It's super janky. It just yanks you to the left, and you're banked like right up against this like natural wall, and it gets like way too close for comfort. You get laterals. There's some whip in the back. It's a crazy maneuver, definitely the most forceful part of the coaster. And it's probably around this moment when you'll start to realize that there's gonna be some pretty gnarly hand choppers during this experience. Like, I never actually did it, but if you put your hand straight out on that turn, you would definitely hit that wall there. And then you rotate out, drop down again, you pass under a little section of track, and this is when you start Zambezi's really long helix. But it doesn't stay at the same level the entire time. You start up high, drop down low, passing underneath the track. You'll get really close to these two supports here, and this helix just keeps on going. You're then again right up against the ground. You keep banking, and then that's when you enter your tunnel. You're keeping to the right as you're completely in the dark, emerge out into the light, and there's the brakes. Overall, the roller coaster is not rough at all, but I also wouldn't call it glassy smooth either. Like, it feels its age, you know, it's like a 50-year-old ride here. And this thing is in great condition for being as old as it is. It is clear that Parque Del Café has been taking great care of it. That's why I say overall, I was really impressed with this experience. It was a lot of fun, you know, nothing mind-blowing or anything, but just one of those rides that you're gonna have a smile on your face as you're going around. It's like a perfect representation of what roller coasters can be. These bonding experiences for people to just come together, forget about their problems, enjoy ride for like 90 seconds is totally a gem of an attraction. But at the same time, if you go out and ride it, understand that this is a family coaster. It's not extreme. It definitely feels similar to Whizzer, although I think I do give this one the slight edge. But just make sure that you have your expectations in place. For its final score, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's a great family ride. It's obviously an older attraction. Family coasters have gotten a lot better since then, but there's something about those old classics that's just so enjoyable. I could see why the people at Worlds of Fun were so fond of this attraction, and I'm excited for them that we're getting a spiritual successor in the form of the new Zambezi Zinger. Even though it's a very different type of ride, I like that they're bringing back the spiral lift, that section track that wraps around it. They're bringing back the tunnel. I think it's going to be a huge hit with the locals. So let me know down in the comments below if you ever got to experience the original Zambezi Zinger when I was at Worlds of Fun, if you've experienced it down in Colombia as Montaña Rusa, and if you're excited to try out the new one. If you're new to the channel, I'd hope that you would consider subscribing. We do roller coaster reviews from places all across the world. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.